was the summer of '55 in Butte, Montana. It was a rough, tough mining town. My buddies and I had been off on a hike on the west side of the town. And we were in the 8th grade going on to high school as freshmen at the end of the summer. We had been walking over by the Vigilante mine, and we had been fooling around down there. And then we had left there and we were walking up the rise, and we were about a half a mile away from the mine when we heard a car down by the mine, and I looked down, and there was a brand new 1955 Mercury, and it was coming toward us, but it had to veer from side to side to miss the rocks and the sagebrush. And every once in a while, this bumper would bottom out, and it would hit sagebrush, and it was flying over the top of the car, and the rear wheels were spinning, and there was a cloud of dust that went all the way back to the mine. And then I could see, sticking out of the passenger window, an arm. And I saw a glint of a gun in that hand. And it was bouncing up and down, but it was pointed at us. And so we started to walk faster. Jeffrey Wiley Chance. That's my mom. She's always been like Jiminy Cricket. Looks like you guys have got yourself in a big kettle of fish. Oh, Mom was always telling me things. Jeffrey Wiley, you know that boys have to be careful who they have for friends, especially that Bobby Holton. We started to walk faster as the car got closer. About 2 hours before, we were in a car driven by Mrs. Holton to take us over to the other side of town. My friend, Kerry Duncan, lived over there, and he used to live by us, but now, since he had moved over to the other side of town, his mother wanted to get us all together for lunch before we went back to high school. Bobby Holton was with us. Bobby Holton was really sort of our leader because he had some characteristics that were just different than the rest of us. First thing is Bobby Holton was a super musician. Really, he played Jelly Roll Morton kind of piano. He had stride piano. He had walking bass. He had syncopated playing. He was known as the prodigy of piano player of the middle school. Another thing was that his dad drove a truck in the pit. The open pit mine in Butte was just starting at that time. One night, his dad took us over to see the truck. The truck was called a Euclid truck. That was the company that made it, or Euc for short. The tires were way taller than what we were, and I climbed up that ladder up into the truck and sat there and looked down at my friends who were little specks down below. Well, when it came time for bragging rights of what our old man did, I said, well, my father sells State Farm insurance. And Bobby'd say, my old man drives a Euc in the pit. The other thing about Bobby is that the way he dealt with authority, he had no fear. A couple of weeks before, I had been invited over to the Holton house for dinner. And as we sat around the table eating, and Mr. Holton, Bobby's old man, said, Bobby, will you pass the potatoes? Bobby didn't do anything. Bobby, will you pass the potatoes? Nothing. Bobby, will you pass the damn potatoes? Bobby reached for that metal spoon that was in the mashed potatoes. Great big spoon. He took a giant dollop of them and splat! He put it right on his old man's plate. Well, his dad went berserk. He took his ear and he took him out in the garage. And out in the garage, there was this bam, 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 and yelling and screaming and cussing back and forth. And then Bobby opened up the garage door, and he came in with his freckled face was crimson red, and he walked into his room and slammed the door. Well, We all finished dinner together, the rest of the family in silence. But that was what kind of kid that Bobby Holton was. Well, when we got over to Carrie Duncan's house on the west side, we fooled around for a while, and then Mrs. Duncan had a lunch for us on the picnic table in the backyard that looked down over the west side of Butte. And as we were sitting there eating, Bobby looked down and he saw that there was a mine down there. What mine is that? That's the Vigilante mine. It's privately owned. You see, in Butte, Montana, all the mines were owned by the Anaconda Company, and including most of the state. But this was a private-owned mine, and he said they mine manganese there. Bobby said, we need to go down and look at that. So we decided to go on a hike. And we hiked down to the mine, and we just came up to the mine. It was surrounded by a 6-foot-high chain-link fence, and there was a sign there that said, "No trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted." Well, you can imagine what that was like to Bobby Holton. He was up over that fence and down on the other side, and he was a chicken with his arms flapping. Bark, 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 bark. It only took a few seconds, and my other 3 buddies were over the top. And now all of them are following Bobby around. Bark, 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 bark. Jeffrey Wiley, don't you even think about going over that fence. What a dilemma. I could do what my mom didn't want me to do and walk back over to Duncan House and maybe walk home by myself. And I would be called a chicken for the rest of my life and never have a friend again. Or I could be over with my buddies. And so I climbed up over that fence, and there I was down on the other side. Inside the mine, right in the center, it was about an acre, and in the center there was a mine shaft that had timbers on it that went straight down over 1,000 feet. And there were 8-foot timbers that lined the sides. There was over it a head frame, and the head frame held up the elevator that had come out of the mine, and it was up in the air, and that's what took men and materials up and down. And then at the top of the elevator was a cable that went up over the huge pulley, and then it went down to the engine room, which was about 30 feet away. And there was a building there where the cable went in. And on that engine room, there was a 5-foot by 5-foot window so that the lift operator could look out and see what was happening at the mine shaft. Somebody took a rock and they threw it down the mine shaft. Now it hit the stuff on the timbers on the side, and it went bang, 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 bang. Splash! Wow. So we did that for a while, and then Bobby Holton saw that there were some tires, old tires, over by the engine house. I don't know why they were there, but anyway, Bobby brought one over. Now he throws that in, and it goes bang, 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 bang. Splash! Next thing, Bobby goes over for another one. And as he's carrying that tire past that 5-foot by 5-foot window, it was clear what was going to happen, and it did in slow motion as that tire went up and through the window and into the engine house. Crash, tinkle, 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 tinkle. Jeffrey Chance, just wait till your father gets home. Well, we were over that 6-foot-high fence and out of there before I knew it, and we were a half a mile away. And the car was getting closer and closer. I could see now that gun, it was closer, and I could see now that it was a Colt 45 automatic. And then all of a sudden, I hear a 45 caliber slug go right over my head. Whoosh! And then followed by the report of the gun. Bam! We started to run. The next thing that happened was a second shot I heard the slug go right by my knees. And it hit the rock right next to me, and there was a big explosion of rock particles, and then the bullet went off into infinity, boing, in a ricochet. We stopped. We turned around, and we waited for that car to come. Jeffrey Wiley Chance, let us pray. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. At the hour of our death, amen. The car came up and came to a screeching halt in the dirt, or a sliding halt in the dirt. Both doors flew open, the engine was left running. The guy on the passenger side came out and he had the .45 aimed right at us. And the driver, who turned out to be the owner of the mine, took his .45 out of his holster. And now we are standing there, 5 boys, looking down the barrels of 2 Colt .45 automatics. You know, like about a half an inch in diameter, the barrel is. The mine owner gave us a tongue lashing, which we deserved. Every other word was profanity, and he really gave it to us, yelling and screaming about what had happened. And then Bobby Holton, he walks right up to him. He stands in front of that .45. He says, "You can't talk to us like that. My old man will kick the blank out of you." Wow. There was total silence. And then the miner went ballistic. He raised that .45 up, and he was going to hit Bobby right alongside the head. And he was coming down. Bobby was all of a sudden on his knees and his hands like this. Please, please, don't hit me. I never know if Bobby planned that or not, but it worked. The mine owner was so startled and so disgusted that he pointed his .45 in a northerly direction, and he said, "You kids get out of here, and you never come back." Well, I've told some of you, heard me talk about the Butte Code before. You never talk about what you've been doing. You never talk about what other people have been doing. And that's the way it was between us, because to this day, none of us have ever discussed that ever again, and no one ever knew. It was a few years ago that I was up in Butte, and I decided that I was going to drive over to the Vigilante mine, where I hadn't been for 55 years. And I had some crazy thing that I thought that as I was driving over there that I might just see the mine owner. Or maybe there'd be an apparition like in Field of Dreams, you know. Shoeless Joe Jackson would show up. But I knew what I was going to say to the mine owner. First, I would apologize profusely for what we had done. And then I would see if there's some way that we could remuneration after all this time for what we had done. And then I would thank him. I would thank him for the lesson that he taught me that day. And then I would tell him about Bobby Holton. Bobby Holton, when he went to high school, he mellowed a bit. And he was always a super musician. The last time I heard them, we were both home from different colleges during the summertime, and he was playing with a jazz quartet. And he played the smoothest saxophone you've ever heard. And then when it needed to be raucous, it was raucous as you'd expect from Bobby Holton. On January 29th, 1969, Captain Robert E. Holton was flying an F-4 Phantom over Laos and was shot down and missing in action. He was a real Butte hero. When I came up to the mine, there was nothing there. There was no fence, no building, no head frame, and the mine shaft had been filled. The whole area had been reclaimed. As I walked around there on the glassy knoll, I thought about what I had learned on that day. And it's what my mom had told me about friends and was always worried about, that I would get in with the wrong crowd and that we really had to be worried about the friends you ran around with. And so when I went off to high school, I totally changed all of my friends that I had. With the whole test was that I would always have pride in bringing them forward in front of my mom. The miner told us on that day to never, ever return to the vigilante mine. And I never did. Yeah.